Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a true jazz guitar luminary, Barry Greene. Barry's journey with the guitar began at age 10, and over the decades, has established himself as one of the most respected players, arrangers, and educators in the jazz world. With 8 albums as a leader and a career as a professor at the University of North Florida, Barry's contributions to jazz are nothing short of extraordinary. His innovative teaching methods, widely celebrated video lessons, and numerous published works have inspired guitarists across the globe. And stick around as we explore Barry's remarkable career, his insights into jazz guitar, and what it means to be both a world-class performer and dedicated educator. So, Barry, good to see you. Thanks for being with me today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Abe. And that was a really nice introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, so my language arts teacher would be proud of me now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
I'm also just noticing, I don't know if you realize it or if you do it intentionally, but the sound reinforcement stuff with the isolation stuff is matching your shirt
oh, real?
almost
I didn't even
exactly.
notice that today. All right, good. So this will be a good picture then. Yeah. So Barry, you've been in this industry for quite some time. You've managed to, do these things that sort of are off. I like to think of it as a little bit of a checklist. And when you become a jazz musician, as far as, you have the professorship, the performance aspect of things, and your I would guess I would call it your business in the jazz guitar video world and lesson world. So, what do you think the biggest misconception out there is for being a jazz musician? What it means to be a jazz musician, whether from the outside world or just jazz musicians in general? It's sort of a mystery what we do.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I would almost think that just a musician in general is just so, mystifying to most people, especially the aspect of considering making a living at it. And I remember when I was younger, and would tell people what I do or what I was trying to do, and say, "But what do you really do for a living?" Though, like it was impossible to have a successful career as a performer. So, in the specifics of jazz, obviously, it's the improvisation part of it that's sometimes not it's not difficult, but it's a mystery to a lot of people, and there's a lot of misconceptions in the way that the understanding that takes tremendous amount of preparation and studying, from the masters. Of course, you know this, but I think a lot of novices or non-musicians just think we just kind of just play stuff and hopefully it sounds good, and not recognizing there's a tremendous amount of background and study that we've done in order to get to the place we can, so we can create on the spot.
Yeah, my jazz guitar teacher from college, his name was John Thomas. I'm not sure if you had heard his name before. He actually just passed, but he had told me when you decided to be a jazz guitarist, you decided to make your life a living hell. That was his exact words.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of cliche sayings like that, meaning, the one that, you don't decide to be a musician or you don't decide music decides you, those kind of things. And I believe in that. I mean, you have to be so passionate about this to be successful with the likelihood that you're not going to get rich doing it either, so it has to be a pure joy and drive to maintain. And I know I've always had that. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything other than what I've ended up doing here.
Yeah, I actually discovered your music from the bar next door in New York City about maybe 10 years ago, something like that. So walk me through what that's like because I know you're down in Florida. Walk me through
Mhm.
like when you're preparing to do a show like that, when the preparation, like do you come up the day before and shed, like how does that work? Because I'm kind of curious about
Well,
that.
okay. Well, I mean, unfortunately, as you know, that bar next door didn't survive COVID. Unfortunately, that was a great hang. But I mean, honestly, because there isn't any kind of rehearsal or anything like that, I would typically use the same bass player, Marco Panacea, who was just great. And it has to be somebody like that where you can just call tunes and he's going to know them, and there's going to be this level of musical dialogue that we can have in a real natural, easy way, where there's no stress, at all. It's just, and he's ideal for that. I use a lot of different drummers, probably almost a different drummer every single time. So in that regard, there's no preparation for me. I'll think about 15 to 20 tunes that I might want to play, and of course, wouldn't be able to play all of those. Um, and I'll just start shedding them just so I feel completely ready to perform them. But as far as the trio itself in those particular gigs, there's no rehearsals. Matter of fact, there was one time, I'll just tell you the story. It was I was staying at a hotel close by, but I called an Uber. And unfortunately, it was like it was garbage day or garbage night, and this we were behind this garbage truck. It wasn't moving. I ended up like walking into the gig with 5 minutes before we start playing,
Oh man.
and Russ Malone is sitting at the front table, like literally 3 or 4 feet away from me, and I was so just, you know what it's like to walk into a gig just about late. I mean, later on, just about on time. You're frazzled. I remember thinking, "Oh, great!" So Russell Malone is sitting in the front row.
One time
So I
he
remember
was
going
the
to the.
only person at my gig there. The only
Oh,
person.
really?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just,
he was such a good man, so supportive, to come out.
rest his soul.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we lost a giant. But yeah, so the combination of those two things, like not having played with this trio before, and then having somebody that you really admire and respect sitting right in front of you. So, but to answer your question, there's really nothing in the way of prep other than me like deciding a bunch of tunes that I'm going to play.
Yeah, and then even in those moments, you might decide, oh, I feel like playing this right now, which was
True,
something that happens.
true.
Let's talk about a piece of music that, inspires you. Or, I tend to think, when you become a musician, there are these certain recordings you're kind of always going back to. And, and you're such a tremendous player. I'm curious about, are there any particular videos or recordings that you always keep revisiting?
I don't know so much about revisiting, but there's certainly recordings that impacted me in a huge, huge way, and it's from different players too. Like, Charlie Parker, the whole Verve series of records with strings, where the recordings are really, really well done. And I remember when I was a student at Berklee College of Music in '79. I mean, all I did was transcribe those recordings for like 2 years straight. That's all I did. I was just so taken by everything about Charlie Parker, and then equally got interested in Coltrane, and specifically the record Coltrane Plays the Blues,
Hmm.
which was amazing. And there's one particular tune called Blues to You. I remember, transcribing that. It was such a great way to bridge the straight ahead way of the Charlie Parker playing, and then introduce me to the new harmonic possibilities, with substitutions and things like that the Coltrane was doing. Cool. And then the guitar players, of course, George Benson, Weekend in LA. That was sounds like a freaking amazing
No, that's
record.
really interesting to hear how
And
you talk about transcribing Coltrane and that record because one thing I really admire about the way you play is, the way you move so effortlessly between, like almost like comping for yourself and then, playing single note stuff, but it kind of moves back and forth. And like that's maybe that's from like, listening to Coltrane with piano behind him and, that's coming
it could
through.
be you know how it is. Some of it is out of necessity. You find yourself you're playing a bunch of trio gigs, sense that emptiness if you're just going to play single lines throughout the entire course of the tune. So it might be some of that too. But I was just going to mention that, like, at least like the Pat Martino El Hombre record is another one. Joe Pass Virtuoso was another. I'm probably forgetting something. I've been asked this question before, and I actually have like a little graphic that I made of my top five favorite records, or the ones that impacted me the most. But I think I've listed the ones that really were most inspiring for sure.
No, that's beautiful. I love to hear about, uh, when you name not just, guitar players and talk about all these other influences in the transcription. We make a lot of sacrifices when you choose to go in the route of being a professional musician. Uh, just all that time
Yeah.
that goes into it. What do you think the biggest sacrifice you've maybe had to make, to go down this path? Does anything come to mind?
It's a great question, but I never felt like I was sacrificing anything. I probably, looking back, I recognize, particularly a music school like Berklee College of Music, there weren't many females there. So the idea of like meeting a girl and dating and all that stuff in college, which, as a professor now in a, typical college where there's a equal mix of both, that's a big part of their life. So for me, it was not at the time, I didn't think of it as a sacrifice. So I was so into trying to become, as good as I could possibly be. And, after that, I was been fortunate enough to have like really, I got a lot of great gigs. I'm not talking about like these all-star jazz gigs, but I'm talking when I say great gigs, gigs that were, weekly, that I can count on a paycheck. It was almost like a regular job. I was able to work these gigs at night, a certain amount of times a week, but on those off nights, be able to play with more creative musicians and do what I loved. And during the day, I practiced a lot and exercise, try to take care of myself as far as health goes. But so honestly, I never really felt like I was sacrificing.
Yeah, and health to health, health is something that maybe goes overlooked by musicians, and that's why they don't have the longevity they probably should.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when you're young, that's not even on your radar at all, really. But yeah, as you get older, sure does sure does make a
And
difference.
also, you mentioned Berkeley and you mentioned all these records. We pick up, lessons, music lessons, not just life lessons from all these unexpected places in our lives. What's the most, you know, out there or strangest place you've ever had inspire your music, you think?
Wow, these are really insightfully great questions. I should have asked you for
No, but I
some
like
notes
the this
before.
is this if you have that's why I called the rabbit hole. You have to kind of go
Right.
down and think for a sec.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm doing just that. It, I can't think of. Do me a favor. Ask me the question one more time,
Okay.
and
Yeah, sure. So, and I could tell you what it would be for me, that we pick up inspiration from a variety of unexpected places. So maybe what's the most unconventional place you've picked up inspiration that might not be music related? Like for me, reading a lot of books by this great Buddhist philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh. He, just about being present was very, very useful for me, and maybe overcoming stage fright. Even just certain movies, just getting the that are just give you that fun feeling. Like, I kind of feel like in Pulp Fiction when John Travolta goes out, like on the date, like that's how you want to kind of feel that excitement when you go to play a gig at night or something. So
yeah.
just these little things that we might have.
Yeah, I would say I can answer your question, but I would say what I would tell you, it didn't happen until later on in life for me, because I think just as a young person, and talking, of course, very personally about myself here, I was just consumed by this, and it wasn't necessarily trying to find sources of inspiration. It was just pure, like, just workaholic, just a really good work ethic. And I had a very planned out way of practicing every day, and I knew the things I wanted to accomplish. So it was very, very pragmatic in that regard. There wasn't any of that spiritual thing
Yeah.
that would happen later. Because what happens, at least for me, once you become a musician, meaning once you've done all that work and you're liberated from all the scales and the modes, you're just playing music all the time. That to me is when I'm more affected by what you're speaking about. And for me, it's more nature, I would guess. I have a kayak. I'm here in Florida, so obviously I can do this all year
You get the
round. But
natural inspiration from the Sunshine State.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're a little crazy over here, but the nature aspect of it is fantastic. So yeah, it's so peaceful, and I will bring these earbuds, listen to music, but a lot of times I'm just not. It's just listen to the silence and just relax out there. So I guess that would be it for me, just to kind of refuel your soul, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I love Florida too. I went to when I was down in Miami this past year. I went to go hear some music at this place. I wish I could remember the Lagny Opera House or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was the just being out at night there and the feeling in the air and stuff. It was such an unforgettable night for me.
Yeah, it is pretty. I'm really far from I could be probably further from where you were. Jacksonville is the very northeast, so it's good over 300 miles away. It's such a
No, I
huge
lived in
state.
Jacksonville for a couple years actually.
Oh, really? When?
When I worked on cruise ships, we were stationed in Jacksonville, so
What time?
technically that was my address.
What year was that though? When would that have been?
2006.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
18
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
But no, it's a great place. Let me ask you this. At this point in your career, you're to be still maintaining this active lifestyle as a musician and being able to contribute so much to the education world. I'm sure it's there's a great financial aspect of contributing too, but there's got to feel this like sense of like I have to like this is what I have to provide for other people that I didn't have. Is there any of that you think about?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm 63 years old now, and I've been at UNF for 29 years. So I've been at it for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point, most people know me from what you just described as being, a teacher, and I have created a tremendous amount of content out there, and I have a lot of conversations with people via email almost routinely, daily, either asking me questions about the content itself or just saying to me, hey, I just want to let you know how much your lessons have helped me out. So yeah, I'm of course inspired by that, and we'll continue to do that for that reason. But yeah, I'd be lying to say if I'm not thinking of it in terms of also when the time comes that I do retire from UNF, it's a substantial amount of income that I can maintain throughout my old age. So I'd be lying if I didn't say that that was part of it as well. But
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
super
No, we
inspiring to
all,
hear from everybody.
yeah, no, but that's good. That to get those emails must be really rewarding. That helps you,
Absolutely.
keep going.
Let me
We,
just say one last thing too about
sure,
about
sure.
that because it happened more last year, but there's a big archtop convention that happens in Denver. Peter Henriksen puts it on. It's called the Rocky Mountain Archtop Festival, is what it is. Yeah. So I just did it again last month or the month before, I forget. But the first year I did it which was the prior year. Everybody's there. All these great guitar, everybody that and then but what I didn't expect is how many people came up to me to talk about we're talking about right now, the lesson thing. And I recognize them, some of them by their name tags, like, wait a minute, I know this guy, he's on my website. But the other part was just I'm so accustomed to seeing like you are right now, just from like here up, and to see these like full human bodies that connected to these faces that I see. It really was overwhelming. I remember walking to my hotel room and thinking, holy crap,
Yeah, it's
I can't
surreal,
believe all that
probably.
just happened. Yeah, exactly. So it happened again this year, but of course, how it is always the first time is always the most memorable. But yeah, that part of it really hit me hard because these are real people that I'm shaking hands with and having conversations with versus, sitting in front of a computer screen just making content. So that was a big deal.
Yeah, no, that's so cool to hear. So can you share with us what's exciting you now about the music and anything you're working on in particular or trying to maybe
Um,
revisit or refine, anything like that?
yeah, I mean, still practice every single day. Um, I like from a technical guitar player point of view, I'm working right now just on it's more of a technical thing, just cleaning up some like triplet playing, phrasing. Like in other words, if you're playing do da 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 those phrases, I tend to pick everything. So what ends up happening on those short triplets, like I just sang, the downbeat ends up becoming an upstroke, and it would sometimes throw me off. I mean, you probably wouldn't even notice it. But for me, I could hear this little bit of just losing, not the pocket, but it doesn't feel as good as I think it could. So I've been working on a different way of handling that. So it's breaking some muscle memory that I've had like forever, but I'm
Yeah, when you're
not
influenced
stopping.
by Coltrane, and he played everything and it just landed like right on the downbeat like that. These things are just things you have that you consider, and I think it's cool to like, you have to explore these nuances of even just the picking technique.
Well, absolutely. And like we're talking about, I've been, playing the guitar for 53 years. Like I started when I was 10, as you pointed out. And I think it's inspiring for myself to feel the desire still to continue to improve. I could easily put the picks down, you know what I mean? And just not do this anymore. In other words, this energized way of just approaching music and just settle with what I have now, which is awesome. But it's not my DNA.
Yeah, no,
So I'm constantly working.
I thought you were much younger, to be honest. You look much younger. I mean, yeah, and that's a good
Thanks.
thing.
I don't know how much longer I can pull this off for, but yes, thank you. Thanks.
No, no, because I mean
Yeah.
the longevity thing and just it's and keeping the spirit about it. That's probably part of it too. Um, let me ask you a question. This is kind of a fun question I like to ask people. If the guitar could talk to you, how would the guitar describe your relationship with it, you think?
Oh man, that's a good one too. That might be the best question of all time. Wow. I don't know. What came to mind immediately, nothing popped out of my mouth yet, but what came to mind immediately would be selfish, only because I'm using it completely to serve myself,
Yeah.
So I'm not really a good like main. I'm looking over here because all the guitars are over on the side of me, but I'm not really great at maintenance, like keeping it clean and all that
No,
kind
I
of
think
stuff.
it's. I asked myself the same question. Mine was like, you're choking me because like you're like, oh, you have to like, like I used to study with Pete Bernstein, and he like
Oh
really laid
man.
into me like you have to like dig into the neck, like
Mhm.
uh, but I mean it was certainly helpful for me. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because this is it's an extension of ourselves, but it's a separate physical thing, and you have to have that
Absolutely.
relationship with it. So
Yeah.
you need so you're could be a little more diligent about, cleaning it and changing the strings and stuff.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think that if I don't get too attached to them, meaning that if someone took my guitars away, I would just buy another one. I'm not trying to say this like in some sketchy, weird way. Just saying that as long as it's set up properly, I'm sure you're the same way. I'll get the sound that I want out of it somehow or another, as long as it's a playable instrument,
The setups are, and you live in a place with a lot of humidity, so it's like you probably have
Yeah.
to have more setups than the average person, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try to do most of it by myself, but like for instance, like right now, it's cool, it's beautiful. The weather's beautiful. It's like in the low 70s. It's been getting down to the 40s at night. But a few days earlier it was like 80 something degrees. So I mean, the tuning sometimes it's be off by a half step. It's just insane.
Yeah,
The
it's crazy.
dramatic changes.
What I'm also kind of curious about, Barry, you named these influences, we talked about these jazz influences, and I mean, I'm sure there's got to be, bands like or classical music, you were other genres that have influenced you over the years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, it's again, Abe, these are really, really great questions versus the what kind of strings do you use kind of questions. So,
Yeah, so do you
um,
prefer the D'Addario, the flat wounds, or do you prefer the labellas,
yeah, but I mean, that's a great question. As a child of the '70s, I still, if I hear like Led Zeppelin come on the radio, I think they were like one of the greatest rock bands ever. So, and I love just the rawness of way Jimmy Page played the guitar and just the pure joy that comes out of it.
I'm getting chills as you're saying this because that was the first time I got the chills for music was from Page.
Yeah, it's terrible to see people write negative stuff about technique and all that kind of junk when, man, the guy's so inspiring. But to this day, right now, I still really love R&B, soul, music. And I love people like Brian McKnight, those kind of just really great singers, and the tunes that have harmonic motion in them, like something like Stevie Wonder, for instance, where these probably will become the new jazz standards one day. You know what I'm talking about because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
actual harmony in them, and it's not just a four chord tune or whatever. But I'd like to think when I hear myself playing that the phrasing comes through, especially like on more melodic moments in a solo or in a straight eighth tune, for instance, or that the phrasing, being inspired by some of those types of singers that just have such a beautiful melodic pocket to them when it comes to just melody, away from all
Absolutely.
the train stuff like we're kind of talking about. Just I think it's a
Yeah.
lost art nowadays. I really, really do. I don't really hear many people just addressing just being soulful and melodic, you know.
Yeah, it's
So
about brand and all this other crap, unfortunately. But that's another discussion to have. Barry, like you went to Berkeley and you finished Berkeley, and which is a rarity, especially.
I didn't finish.
Oh, you didn't finish Berkeley.
I went 2 years and then finished up at William Patterson
Oh, okay, that's what
College.
it was. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Still tremendous jazz program. Um,
Yeah.
but to go to go to these universities and you to go and to finish and to still be here today, you got to be self-assured when you're younger. Like, when did you know, like, this is what I'm going for? Like, was there a defining moment, or maybe something like a light switch went off when you heard a certain recording or something? Like, when did
Man,
it happen for you?
honest, Abe, I think a lot of it just had to do with, when I was as a kid, was very, very shy. I wasn't a great athlete, and was teased a little bit in high school, like a lot of kids are. And when I discovered the guitar, this is just a friend of mine was playing some Beatles tunes on an acoustic guitar. This would have been, like in the early '70s, mid '70s, whatever. I thought it immediately just hit me like, oh man, I really want to do this. And once I started getting good at it, and all of a sudden those people that were kind of teasing me, all of a sudden now are my best friends, you know. So that it was more of that. And quite frankly, you know, we mentioned Zeppelin again in high school. I was there, it was 77, 78. This is like those records were coming out, you know. And so when I remember I was cutting school. This is not kids. If you're listening at home, don't follow this advice. But I was cutting school a lot just to stay home and practice. You know, I would just
Yes,
sit
I
in my
love
room and
that.
learn all these solos off the recordings. Da, 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 da. And I remember when I was getting close to being college age, my mother, and that, you know, Jewish lady from New Jersey. I mean, if she said this to me, she meant it. She said, Barry, if you don't, you know, finish school and, you know, go to college, or I'm going to kick you out of the house, was some major threat. You know, forgetting exactly what she said, but it did put the fear of God in me, so to speak. And I remember started taking lessons from a guy in Fort Lee, New Jersey, who just coincidentally just moved down here to St. Augustine, just south of here. But anyway, and when he introduced me to jazz, I didn't like it at all. I just did not. It sounded like after just listening to, you know, rock and roll, Aerosmith and Zeppelin, and all that stuff. It sounded like there was a lot of wrong stuff going on there. And but I did it out of necessity. You know, I said I only had a couple of choices. Back then, this was 79. You know, there weren't all these programs and studio music programs. Back then it was North Texas State, Miami, Berkeley. I think those are the three phone calls that I made, you know, if I'm thinking about going to school. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to go get a degree in jazz. I'll start studying jazz from this jazz guitar teacher. But it took me a long time before began to enjoy it. And then, of course, at this point now, it's, you know, it's an incredible experience to be a jazz musician and play with good people in an improvising setting like that. Since there's nothing better,
No,
but it took a
totally.
while.
And
Took a
I love how
while.
it's one of the great things about today that's still around today is like the accredited colleges, you can't go there and study all these, you can't go there and study like pop music or something, but it's like if you want to do music in a performance way or it's jazz or classical, those are the
That's
teachers.
exactly right. That's it. I mean, there are some little breakout programs. I think like University of Southern California, I believe, has like a studio music program, like kind of a hybrid kind of a thing where you are learning about music theory and jazz, but there's an emphasis also on training you to be a studio musician, getting on the road with a band, that kind of a thing. But like you said, almost all the programs are just as you described. It's classical or jazz.
No, I
You know,
think they
so
need. I'm so happy that structure is still. They're not budging on that. If like William Patterson, it's like jazz or classical still to this day.
right. That was a great experience, by the way. You know, and back that when I was there, it was 83, 84, I believe, and Bill Stewart was a classmate as well as Carl Allen, two amazing drummers. It was so crazy to think that Carl Allen was not the best drummer, you know, meaning that we had two heavyweights there, you know, at all times. It was
No,
it was
those
it was
those
such a great
those
place.
guys are killers.
I know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So you would think, like, without a doubt, that it would, you know, Carl would be the guy. But then all of a sudden, I'll tell you this story because it's a funny story. But I remember I was in an ensemble room practicing with a bass player. We were playing rhythm changes really, really fast, you know, like 22-year-olds do or whatever it was. And I didn't know Bill. Yeah, nobody had met him yet. He just knocked on the door. He's got this like fresh, like Iowa corn face, you know, looked like I said, he said to me, hey guys, can I play with you? And I said, I don't know, can you? Like, such stupid shit when you're a kid, you know? And of course, we ended up becoming great friends. But imagine, you know, it's a good thing I didn't know how good he was at
That's
that
so
time.
funny.
You know, oh, it was hysterical. But yeah, Bill was something else, man.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I just watch videos of him. There's a couple of videos on YouTube, like just like his like feats, and I just watched that. I'm like, wow, it's so amazing how he executes these different limbs and so musical.
It
Um,
is, and I was when I was there. I mean, people started hiring him. Like that's when Schofield and Joe Lovano, people started hiring him as a student. You just watch this all with like absolute disbelief. Like, holy crap, man! You know,
yeah,
it's
definitely.
amazing.
Barry, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one more question. So at this point in your career, on November 22nd, 2024, I'm looking at the calendar. What are you most grateful for in your career now, looking back?
Um, well, obviously, you know, having as you put it as a professorship, that more than anything added a level of stability that most jazz musicians are never gonna. are never going to have, to, one day, go from playing gigs, $100 gigs and figuring out how you're going to pay the rent to having a 401k and a health plan. It was amazing, so from that perspective of just, life and being able to live a pretty stable life. Certainly is that having that gig, and like I said, it's been just about 30 years
Yeah, that's
now.
amazing. I started working at a college like a couple years ago, and I like those jobs there people once people stay at them, and like I waited like I got my master's in 2011 and I didn't start working at a college until 2022, I think it was. So 11
Right,
years to have to
right.
these positions they're truly a blessing to have, and that's and you're still there, so you must enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, look. I just there's a couple of things built into that statement you just said. I mean, sure, of course I enjoy it, but there is the essence of like, look, I'm 63. I might have another 25, 30 years in me. Who knows? And I want to make sure that, I'm prepared. So there's the financial aspect of this that I'd be foolish to leave at this point right now, especially when I'm feeling healthy and been there for so long. But yeah, I guess yeah, I love it. There's a financial aspect to it, and of course, a sense of pride. But that I have the position, but I'm almost certain. I can't say this with 100% certainty, but based on what you're just talking about, I think you'd find it interesting that I don't think that when I leave, that position will remain. I
Oh,
don't feel the
wow.
support. I don't feel the support. I don't feel, in a sense, there's a general sense for me that at least the programs that I'm aware of that I speak to a lot of people are about that it's on the decline a bit, as far as the enrollment and that's of young people more hesitant about getting a degree in jazz performance. It somehow I think it coincides with COVID. I don't know if there was some great awakening or something like that happened, but things
COVID
haven't
did a
quite.
number on everything. It totally changed everything. I mean, even
Yeah, it really, really did.
New York City, it's like a jazz ghost town, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, it's a really a shame. So all these things are kind of aligning at the same time where I'm seeing this happening. I'm getting to an age where retirement's a possibility. And like I said, I think UNF in particular, where I'm at, all of us, and I'm talking like, well, Danny Gottlieb, I'm sure you know from the original Pat Metheny group, drums, and then Lynn Ariel's a spectacular piano player. So what I'm saying is, I think we have at least 5 or 6 full-time faculty teaching jazz, but even that is pretty unheard of. Like those are all tenure earning lines. I just don't think that it's sustainable anymore with the enrollment the way it is. And I think as
Mhm.
we start getting older and timing out, that they'll just turn them into like instructor lines or, but the days of a tenure earning lifetime position at a university for jazz studies, man, like you just said, it's
And
rare.
I'm an
So
adjunct, so it's like even just it's like, yeah, you're very lucky in that sense.
no
So
doubt, no doubt. So that the answer to your question was pretty easy. I want to think there's a more spiritual side to it too, but yeah, but the just bread and butter stuff is tremendous. Yeah, it's definitely very fortunate, no doubt
yeah,
about
well,
it.
Barry, this has been great. I really thank you for taking your time to speak with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, Abe, and I really enjoyed the questions. Really,
Good,
really
good. I'm getting good
completely
at
insightful.
interviewing.
Totally. What's that?
I'm getting good at interviewing finally.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.